Okay, seeing as all the members are present and seated, we'll start today's meeting. Welcome to meeting number 6 of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs, where we're continuing the study of the Centre Block Rehabilitation Project and Block 2 redevelopment as a part of the long-term vision and plan, the LTVP as it's referred to. Welcome to Minister Anand today at our meeting, and welcome back to Mr. Wright and Mr. Matthews, her Deputy Minister and Assistant Deputy Ministers. We will start with the 10-minute presentation by Minister Anand.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I would like to acknowledge our presence on the traditional territory of the Algonquin peoples. Let me begin by thanking all of you for being here and for giving me this wonderful opportunity to come and speak with you today. Merci de m'avoir invité à discuter de la vision.
Thank you for having invited me to discuss the long-term vision and plan for Canada's parliamentary precinct in my role as Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Matthews, my Deputy Minister, who leads an outstanding team of professionals whom I am proud to work with every day. Thank you, Bill, for being here. And Rob Wright, Assistant Deputy Minister for the Science and Parliamentary Infrastructure Branch, whom I believe you've had the pleasure of getting to know over the last week or two. Thank you both for being with me today, and thank you for your excellent work that you do at PSPC. Madam Chair, the buildings and grounds on and near Parliament Hill are symbols of our democracy and part of our history. We need to ensure that they meet the needs of a 21st century Parliament. At the same time, these buildings should reflect the values of Canadians and be places where all Canadians are welcome. That is why our focus is not only on functionality, restoration, and preservation, but also on making these spaces more accessible, sustainable, and secure. You will hear me speak today about these values. Comme vous le savez bien, notre...
As you well know, our work in the precinct extends beyond the hill and includes revitalizing the city block facing Parliament Hill itself, and more particularly the buildings between the streets of Metcalfe and O'Connor and Wellington and Sparks. They are also known as Block 2. Last week, officials from my department told you about the work that we have completed so far in these areas and our plans going forward. To date, the department has delivered 24 key projects in the precinct on time and on budget.
Transition of Parliament from Centre Block to the newly restored West Block and the Senate of Canada building. But there are also other milestones, such as the successful renovation and addition to the Sir John A. Macdonald building and the extensive renovations on the Wellington building. As my officials mentioned at this committee, this milestone was the culmination of well over a decade of work restoring and modernizing facilities in the precinct to now move to undertake our most significant project, the rehabilitation of Centre Block. Tous les Canadiens et les Canadiennes peuvent être...
All Canadians can take pride in the fact that our achievements thus far are earning acclaim and recognition around the world. It is worthwhile noting that Canada's work to restore and to modernize the parliamentary precinct has received over 57 awards in the areas of architectural excellence, sustainability, and heritage conservation.
complex, balancing restoration with modernization. As my officials outlined to you, that complexity will only increase now that we are turning our collective attention to Centre Block, the largest project of its kind ever undertaken in Canada. Madam Chair, I know that you and this committee have had the pleasure of touring the exterior and interior of Centre Block to see firsthand the important work being done. I, too, have had the pleasure of doing the same with Rob Wright in one of my first activities as minister. And I think that we can all agree that the magnitude of the place and the work ahead of us are extraordinary, to say the least. Beyond the difference in scope and scale, Centre Block has another major difference when compared with projects to date. En ce qui a trait à l'édifice du centre, nous passons.
With Centre Block, we are now shifting from projects serving a single partner, the House of Commons or the Senate, for example, to those serving multiple partners.
As members of Parliament, Centre Block must work in a way that meets the needs of all parliamentarians, as well as those who support us, namely the Library of Parliament and the Parliamentary Protective Service. Several key decisions are required in the months ahead, including some that have the potential to impact the way that Parliament has traditionally operated. The particular challenge is this: governance and decision-making with the long-term vision and plan is unique, complex, and very important to the success of the plan. With two chambers and two branches of government, decisions affecting the home of our democracy cannot be made unilaterally or by one single person. My responsibility as minister, with the support of my department, is the day-to-day operations of the buildings and the planning and delivery of major restoration and modernization projects, as well as managing the associated budgets and seeking approval from Cabinet and Treasury Board. Each chamber is responsible for the identification of long-term goals, objectives, and outcomes. They are also responsible for ensuring and coordinating engagement with their respective arm of Parliament, as well as securing the endorsement of MPs and senators. The parliamentary administration for both the House and Senate is the lead for engagement with parliamentarians. PSBC is responsible for delivering the built environment that meets the needs of both chambers as defined by their respective administrations in consultation with MPs and senators. Integrated, stable decision-making is critical to ensuring the success of projects that will shape our country's most important national symbol for more than 100 years. I am so honored to be here today to speak with you about this shared national symbol. The reality facing us is that a number of key decisions will need to be made in order for current and future projects to progress. Most of these decisions, particularly around Centre Block, are arguably more important than ever. Now is the time to take collective and collaborative leadership and ownership and explore new avenues for effective decision making. As you know from your discussions with the professionals in my ministry, the department has developed options for considerations by MPs and senators to support key decision points relating to the parliamentary precinct and in particular Centre Block. During this committee study, officials from my department and the House administrations, accompanied by partners from the Library of Parliament, all working closely together over many months, outlined these decision points. They are now asking us to consider the path forward. They are asking parliamentarians what they require of a rehabilitated center block. So these are the critical decision points that have to be addressed before we can move forward, before our officials can finalize design, costing, and timelines. For example, decisions are needed on whether to increase the size of the chamber, to modernize the chamber within the existing footprint, and to make other adjustments to the way in which the chamber functions. We need to make decisions regarding the core functions of the Visitor Welcome Center, which is a facility that plays a number of roles, but most critically, it provides the connection that transforms the parliamentary triad, the triad that consists of the West, the Center, and the East blocks, from 3 buildings into one seamlessly linked complex. We need clarity on the needs of the House and Senate for the Block 2 redevelopment as well. We need decisions on parliamentary participation in the jury for the international design competition, and this project will reshape the city block directly across from the Peace Tower, blending heritage and function for the future, and further advance the creation of our parliamentary campus. In closing, Madame la Présidente, depuis que j'ai été nommée ministre, j'ai pu constater que les employés...
In the short time since I have been minister, it has become clear to me that the dedicated employees of Public Services and Procurement Canada take great pride in their work.
Of Parliament to prescient work by parliaments dating back nearly half a century, calling for the creation of a visitor welcome centre and securing the blocks opposite Parliament Hill for future requirements, both of which will now be realized. I am so proud of the role that my department plays in the long-term vision and plan for the precinct, and I am grateful for the talented public servants, architects, engineers, project managers, and construction workers who are seeing it through every single day, as well as the parliamentary administrations who are working with the very same degree of professionalism, commitment, and expertise. Je suis ravie de...
I am most heartened by how very well all of our teams are coming together on this massive, collaborative undertaking. I can tell you that they are all ready to move forward on the next phase of our plan.
In our plan, it is imperative that we get this right. Our challenge now is how we best come together as one parliament to make sound, enduring decisions. I hope that this committee will work with my officials on the decision-making process by exploring ways to fill the gaps in the current governance structure and resolve the outstanding items that we have raised so that we can continue our success. And as always, I welcome your views, your ideas, and your discussion on any and all of these matters. After all, the work we are doing today will serve Canadians, regardless of political party, for generations to come. I look forward to working with you and with the rest of our fellow parliamentarians to revitalize the heart of our democracy by making these historic buildings more functional in a modern world, greener, and accessible to all Canadians. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister. We'll begin with our first round of questions at 6 minutes each. Mr. Richards.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I guess it was last week, we had a presentation from your officials. You mentioned that. That presentation gave us a whole array of different options for a variety of different things, such as, as you mentioned in your presentation, the size of the Visitor Welcome Center, what to do about the chamber. But one thing that was fairly clear that it was lacking in, and that was something that's pretty critical. That's the mention of costs. So I wanted to know if you would consider that to be a good decision-making or governance practice, to make those kinds of decisions without knowing the cost implications.
Thank you so much for this very important question. I can assure you that the issue of costs and budgeting is front and center in my mind as the minister overseeing the day-to-day activities of the project and indeed the parliamentary precinct restoration. Let me assure you that decisions have not been taken about the way in which the restoration is going to proceed, which is the very purpose, I believe, of the parliamentary administration and the governance structure that is set up. What I will say is that once these decisions are taken, then my team will be in a better position to provide costing and timelines to this body and to the board.
If I can interrupt.
Sure.
I mean, how can, we're being asked as parliamentarians for input, but we're not being provided with any estimates of cost. I understand you're saying once decisions are made, we can come up with costs. Mm-hmm. To me, I mean, my understanding of your career pre-politics was that governance was a fairly heavy role in that. You actually were, I understand, professionally honored for your contributions in governance. So based on that deep professional background, are you satisfied with this arrangement, these governance arrangements for this long-term vision and plan, especially for the center block, when you're saying to me, well, we'll make some decisions and then we'll make the costs up after that? That doesn't sound to me like a real strong governance plan, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Sure.
Are you satisfied with that? Or do you think there's some areas where that could be improved?
Thank you for the question. Thank you for highlighting my relevant background in this area, which I did not do myself. But I will say that I have asked my team to ensure that there is a back and forth relationship with the parliamentary partners to ensure that we can collaboratively work together to provide you with information you need to make the decisions that are on the table. And so we would be prepared to provide preliminary costing analysis along with the key decision-making points so that you can be informed in making the decisions that are before you. And I'll ask my deputy minister to step in on preliminary costing availability as well.
Sure, and if you can make that quick. I mean, I don't have a lot of time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You'll be able to give us some sense as to when we would be able to receive that kind of information.
I will be very quick on this. It is a bit of a chicken and egg situation, Madam Chair. So what we're looking for is to make sure that we have a sense of the vision, and these are some big decisions. Two are very important, the chamber and the Welcome Centre. And those are two that I would suggest we focus in on. And if we can come back and do some preliminary costing and put those on the table, but it would be very helpful for us if we found out from the stakeholders and decision makers which of the three options, if any of them are not on the table. If there's some that are not of interest, we don't want to waste our time costing those. So it is chicken and egg. So we'd like to get a sense, Madam Chair, of are we on the right track? Are there some that are more interested than others? And we'll focus in on those two if that's acceptable, and we'll come back with timelines.
So if the committee can provide some feedback there, then we would be able to receive some costing fairly quickly.
1 minute.
Okay.
Two.
Minister, are there any requirements or requests within this project that you've heard about or been briefed on since you took over the file, which give you any pause, or is there anything that you heard that made you say we better go back to the drawing board on this one? Is there anything that you have concerns about?
So as you highlighted in your first question to me, budget is always of concern to me, not just with regard to Centre Block, but with regard to everything I do as a Minister of the Crown. I'm very conscious of budgetary asks and needs and requirements. So I will maintain a very close eye on costing as well as what...
But at this point, is there anything that you've seen? Like, I'll give you an example. I know there were some eyebrows that have been raised about the idea that the Senate's requesting 10 new televised committee rooms, for example. Is that something that you would have challenged or questioned, or is there other things that you've, at this point, you've seen that you've challenged or questioned?
I take the question. Again, I am not overly... engrossed in making suggestions about what we should be considering. Okay. I'm very clear about the fact that these decisions need to be made by you as parliamentarians.
But obviously there's a number of different people that are involved in determining allocation of space in the Centre Block, and I kind of want to get a sense as to who's who's responsible for that allocation, and who would make a final decision if there's disagreement. So for example, if the Prime Minister were to say to you that he wants X amount of space in center block set aside for the PMO, for example, and that was to clash with something that is requested by parliamentarians in the House of Commons, how would those decisions be resolved? Who has the final decision-making power here? How would disagreements be resolved in those areas?
What I sent
All the time we have, unless you have a very short answer for that, I will allow it.
I would be more than happy to continue the conversation if we have another time to do so in this session. Or
she's offered you the opportunity to provide a short answer.
I believe that the current framework could be improved to streamline decision making. I don't view myself as the final arbiter of decisions where there is a disagreement.
Okay, Mr. Turnbull, 6 minutes.
Thank you. Minister, thank you so much for being here. It's really great. Really appreciated the opportunity to tour the center block and see the incredible work being done. And just say I was really impressed by your team and the amount of information they've provided, and the attention to detail is really clear to me that you've got highly competent people working with you. So I have 3 questions. My first one is about sustainability. I'm a sustainability expert that came into politics just this term, so it's always been an area that's important to me. As we know in this parliament, of course, energy efficiency, clean growth, sustainability is becoming something that's an imperative for all of us. It's something that Harvard Business Review called the new mega trend about 7 or 8 years ago, which is they've sort of paralleled with information technology. So if you think about sustainability in the next 100 years, it's going to be something so commonplace that I'm just interested in knowing how Centre Block might be an opportunity to showcase how innovative we can be and how committed we are to sustainability as a country. Can you tell me about what opportunities you see?
Thank you so much. As Mr. Wright likely told you, we are committed to continue to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across government buildings, including the precinct, and greening our operations. The precinct has become a model of what can be achieved in terms of meeting tomorrow's sustainability targets while protecting and preserving the heritage of the space. Sustainability targets are built into every project in the LTVP, and I am proud to say that we are exceeding these goals. We are similarly reducing our construction waste with each project by recycling 90% of demolition materials. I will ask Mr. Wright if he has anything further to add on this issue.
Well, that was a really good overview, Minister, and just add a couple pieces of color commentary. We are, I think, doing a really good job here in the precinct, and we're reaching further, as the Minister indicated, with the center block for it to be a symbol of sustainability. And we have done a range of efforts across the precinct, from solar panels to green walls, to urban beehives at the Senate of Canada building, for example. But the core is really about making sure that we have very efficient mechanical equipment, harvesting of rainwater, modern lighting that consume a lot of energy. And we are working hand in glove with the modernization of the central heating and cooling plant as well, which will provide multiple benefits for the whole central core of the capital, including the parliamentary precinct.
Thanks very much. It's great to hear that that's being made a priority. So my next topic is family friendly. So the 42nd Parliament undertook 2 separate studies to foster a more family-friendly House of Commons and made several recommendations on that front. I have a young family, and so it's particularly of interest to me just to know how can we ensure that the new centre block creates an environment that's more family-friendly for people like myself or other members that have young children and young families.
Well, thank you so much for that question. As a mother of four myself, I too share concerns about family-friendly environments, and I think as elected members of Parliament, we all are concerned about families and space being accessible to families and other individuals with disabilities, for example. And so accessibility is a huge issue in the renovation and restoration process. By making the space more accessible, we're also making the space more family friendly. We have increased the size of elevators in the West Block, for example, and that has allowed for motorized wheelchairs and strollers to be used around the Parliament. We've also enlarged and upgraded washrooms to provide for changing spaces across new buildings. So we have heard that this is a priority for members of Parliament, and it is something that we are taking on board as we proceed with the restoration of Centre Block. Rob, did you have anything else to add on that?
I think that's perfect, Minister. And I would say, as the Minister indicated in her opening remarks, it's the engagement with parliamentarians which is the critical foundation to ensuring that the Centre Block meets your needs. So we are completely open and wanting to have that engagement to understand how the facility, as part of its modernization, can meet the needs of parliamentarians. The nature of parliamentarians have changed a lot over the past 100 years. That will continue to evolve, and we want to make sure that these buildings meet the needs of parliamentarians when it opens and for generations to come.
Thank you. That segues perfectly into my last question, which is about governance.
You have 20 seconds.
I have 20 seconds.
Throw it out.
So there are several clients or key stakeholders, including the Senate and House administration, MPs and senators. I just wondered if you had any thoughts about the optimum governance model. I think there's some preference for a joint committee, but potentially could see two independent committees with some mechanism for resolving any differences between them. So I'm just wondering whether you have a preference for one or the other, and if you've had any thoughts about the optimum governance model.
Well, thank you again.
Really, really short, 10 seconds.
Well,
if you could just,
sorry.
because I think the other members will pick it up too.
Okay.
So,
Okay, let's then proceed to
yeah.
that.
Monsieur Terrier.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Do you speak French? And the fact that you do is, how much time do I have? Very quickly? I won't take all my time, I'm sure. I'll leave it for other colleagues. What struck me when I heard you speak and when I read your speech, you respected the budgets. In other words, you delivered on time and on budget. That's something that's very important. Recently, we haven't been convinced that there were markers with respect to the cost, the eventual cost of all this. You said in your remarks that in the past, the construction that was done around the parliamentary precinct was done on time and on budget. Was it the original budget, or were there any extensions?
Yes, you are exactly right. I care a great deal about les budgets. Et c'est très important pour moi.
I care about budgets. It's very important for me to take a good close look at the budgets from time to time.
That West Block, the Visitors Welcome Center, the Senate, the 100 Wellington Place, the Library of Parliament, and the Sir John A. Macdonald were all delivered on time and on budget. There are revisions to the budgets that occur from time to time, but those are discussed with the parliamentary administration. So I want to stress that at no time do we go off on a frolic of our own and decide our budgetary parameters without consultation. And I will hand it over to Rob Wright to continue with this point.
Et merci pour les questions.
Thank you very much for your question, Madam Chair. As the Minister said, we have a very strong background concerning meeting deadlines. And concerning your specific question, it is the original budget. The budgets that were put in place with Treasury Board were respected. Can I add something? In view of the fact that we discussed the supplying of options for you.
A budget. Just to be clear, une budget, c'est quelque chose qu'on va établir.
It's not a budget. Those are estimates. A budget is established only after all details have been considered. I may be mistaken, but if I've understood correctly, you have a variety of scenarios. You presented them. You will present them to the parliamentary committee. You'll say, these are the scenarios, these are the costs attached for each. Thank you.
Be happy to provide preliminary cost estimates for the Welcome Center and the Chamber, and we will aim to do that very quickly, likely within 4 weeks or so. And then we will present those to the committee for their discussion and consideration before, again.
OK. Parce que, évidemment...
Yes. Because when I have listened to previous interveners, Mr. Wright, and I say I do appreciate your being here today, when I look at it, it's the taxpayers' money, of course, we all agree. We don't want to purchase a Ferrari just to go to the post office when you can use a lesser car to do the same thing. What we want to do in terms of construction is to meet the needs. How can I say this? Praiseworthy needs, but needs that must really correspond to what is needed. We don't necessarily want something splendid here, a palace, because the taxpayer is going to say, what is the justification for this? It's important that it is functional and it meets the criteria. Thank you. Yes, it is very important to think about these matters.
Ultimately important here, and je pense la même chose.
And I think just like you do with respect to that.
Welcome Center, just as an example for a moment, and I know that Mr. Wright raised these different scenarios with you, but it's a great example. There are different scenarios, and the costing would differ depending on them. For example, in the Visitors Welcome Center Phase 2, should we have 1 point of entry or multiple points of entry? Those items, the decisions that are taken surrounding those items are going to cost, obviously, different amounts. And so I use that as an example, and will ask my team to present preliminary costing to you so that that helps to inform your decision-making process.
Ms. Blaney for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you so much, Minister, for being here with us today, and I appreciate the time that you took with your presentation, and of course enjoyed very much my tour in Centre Block as a member who served in Centre Block. We've mentioned this before. It was definitely a little bit hard to see it under construction, but also good to be back. I guess, one of the things that's coming up here, and I think it is a very important issue, which is the issue of money and making decisions around money, and understanding more clearly the process of how those decisions are made. So I guess my first question to you, Minister, is sort of what is the sense of vision around costs? How is the process being done in terms of figuring out what is required and what is wanted, and how to find the space in between those two issues? Because, as Mr. Richards mentioned earlier, the Senate is making some interesting requests for what they want to see happen. And I think, understanding what is needed, what is wanted, and also looking forward to the reality that the House and Parliament will change as a reflection of a growing population. So I'm just wondering, what is the process of doing that? And then I guess the second part of that question is, how are parliamentarians working with that process? How is the input and how is the accountability so that we can be assessing and understanding as representatives for our constituencies the tax dollars that will be spent on those types of projects and choices?
Okay, thank you so much. There are two main questions that you're asking me. One is relating to process for deciding costing, and the second is relating to parliamentarians having input into the process. So I'll take each of those questions in turn. In terms of our process, I think we would all do well to remember that the long-term vision and plan set out in 2001 and then again in 2007 the plan for the parliamentary precinct. So this plan has been in place through multiple different governments. And $4.5 billion in funding was approved for the LTVP, of which $3.5 billion has been spent to date. The LTVP is designed to be delivered through short-term rolling government-approved programs of work, each of which has been clearly defined and measurable with performance targets and schedule and budget milestones. Every year we produce an annual report, which my department will be more than pleased to share, which contains these milestones and the timelines and the budgetary considerations that we've been working under. But in terms of the governance structure that is in place for making decisions, the current framework involves three levels, but is overseen by the parliamentary administration. Of course, there is BOI and CBA, and those committees work with the parliamentary partners, the MPs and the senators. And so, in my view, the decisions, as I mentioned in my speech, the decisions rest with those committees and the parliamentary administration regarding how MPs are able to participate in the process. In terms of parliamentarians having input into it, again, it's my view that the governance structure that is overseen by the parliamentary administration could streamline this process to a greater degree, perhaps by having a combined committee so that decisions are streamlined and they're more efficiently made. But again, that's not in my purview to make the decision, but it's one that I would support if it was made.
Thank you so much for that. So the other thing, and I just want to express my appreciation for Mr. Turnbull's questions on sustainability. I think as we look forward in our future, retrofitting, looking at how we're going to sustain moving forward is really important. So you talked a little bit about sort of the success that you feel that we've had in this so far. I'm just wondering, how is that measured? And how is that, again, reported back to the larger public? And are we seeing an articulation of some of these successes, as you frame them anyways, to the rest of the Canadian public to look at leadership in this area?
Thank you so much for the question. As I mentioned, sustainability targets are built into every project in the LTVP. We are constantly thinking of new ways for us to become more environmentally sustainable. And so in 2018, PSPC launched a 3-year environmental sustainability strategy for the precinct, which focused on water conservation, waste reduction, and energy use. I'll turn it over to Mr. Wright, who will explain the public disclosure of this information.
And there's, I think, two elements that I can add to the minister's answer response is, so one is GHG emissions. We had a specific target of a reduction of 40% compared to 2005, 2006 baseline. We've, in the past year, achieved 56% reduction ahead of schedule. So that's one element. We have another specific target. Minister indicated the recycling of demolition materials. Our target is an 80% recycling. We've consistently achieved over 90%. And on this building and the Senate of Canada building, we achieved 93% between the two. We've achieved up to 97%. The Wellington building was our highest that we achieved with a 97% recycling.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Richards.
Sure, thanks. Just wanted to go back to where we ended off. You had said at the end, like I was asking you about the allocation of space and whether when there's a disagreement. I use the example of if the Prime Minister was to say I need X amount of space for PMO, yet parliamentarians were to say no, we need more room for something else. And you said you wouldn't be the final decision maker or arbiter in that. Who would be? Who would make those final decisions?
Well, as I said, the parliamentary administration is responsible for bringing together the members and senators in their respective decision-making bodies to determine what would be appropriate for the space that pertains to them and their views on the budget and the timelines. And so my view is that information would be hopefully made on a consensus basis and that I would be in a position to approve decisions that were made at committee.
Okay, but let's say, those different bodies, or however we want to put it. Let's say the House, the demands of the House of Commons, the demands of the Senate, the demands of the Prime Minister's office were all to conflict with each other, and there wouldn't be enough space to meet all those demands. Obviously, somebody has to make a final decision. Who is that?
I, as set out in the Department of Public Works and Government Services Act, am the minister responsible for the day-to-day operations of the buildings, and I am the official custodian of the buildings and the grounds of the precinct. And as such, I ultimately could make the decision. However, my preference is to have in place a governance model where it is not the minister of the Crown that is making crucial decisions. My preference, and I think all of our preferences, is to have a collaborative decision-making model where MPs are heard and making decisions about the space that, as elected representatives, they will occupy.
Sure. Understood. That puts you in a pretty awkward spot, for sure, if there is to be those demands. Say the Prime Minister was to really insist, as we've known him to do in the past with other ministers, on something being his way. That puts you in a very awkward spot, and I understand that. I know that... sure. If I can just finish, because I do have a question here, and I want to give some time to one of my other colleagues. Before the election, I understand this committee came up with a unanimous report, and one of the recommendations in that report was to have this committee have oversight of the full extent of the construction and the various actors within it. That recommendation didn't get adopted by the government before the election. I wonder if you would support that effort being renewed.
I, as I just said, believe that it is imperative that we have input into the decision-making project from members of Parliament and those who have been elected to office. I myself, as a member of Parliament, feel this very strongly. But I'm fully aware that we are parliamentary democracy that has two decision-making chambers, one being the House of Commons and the other being the Senate. And I believe that in respect of that governmental structure, we need to ensure that there are participants from each House of Government in the decision-making process.
Okay, I'll turn the rest of my time over to Mr. Duncan.
There's a little over a minute.
I talk better than that. This will challenge that. Thank you, Minister, for being here. Congrats on your new role. Just building on what you had said there, I agree that, and I appreciate your approach here. I struggle even still after our meeting the other day what role PROC has in this. We're a bit of a consultation. Approvals go to BOIE. We've got the House, we've got the Senate, we've got security, we've got the library, we've got Treasury Board and Cabinet, we've got you, and I just really see a challenge here going forward with timely decisions and those types of things. So I appreciate your words or comments on some sort of joint effort between the House and Senate, all these partners at a members and Senate level, whatever that may be. You had mentioned that it's not for you to decide, but I think you could play a leadership role, frankly, and simple as a letter or a declaration saying, look, as a minister that has the final sign-off on this, I think your voice and, frankly, your background in corporate governance could go a long way to doing this. And the comment I'll just make in my brief time is that these types of projects are important historically, culturally, the building, but I also think it's important for us as elected officials. It's these types of projects that the public look to us and we get a reputation on. And I say that in a bipartisan manner, good or bad. And I use the skating rink as an example. It used to be Maple Leafs Garden was the most popular skating rink in Canada. Unfortunately, it was the one out in the front lawn a couple of years ago that gets more attention and more people talking. So I'm just wondering if you could speak more maybe about the role that you could take or the voice that you can take, I think, to get this done. Because I worry, and my frustration being from a municipal background going here, we talk about it, the committee adjourns, and that's just the end of it. So I was wondering if you have a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan, and you're much over time now. Ms. Duncan.
I didn't talk fast enough.
No, you didn't. But there were good points.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Minister. Good morning. Thank you to you and your officials for coming. We appreciate you being so gracious with your time. And I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues for recognizing your background, which is key in this role. So thank you for coming. I will also touch on governance. After the fire of 1916, there was a joint committee struck, and Pearson reported weekly to that committee. The transcripts exist from that meeting. And I think it's really important that the House and the Senate, Library of Parliament, the parliamentary partners work together. And I'd welcome your thoughts.
Well, thank you so much for both questions, which actually relate to each other in terms of thinking about alternatives to the current somewhat fragmented model that we have in place. I would like to say that I would be in favor of any improvements to the current framework that would lead to better, more integrated decision-making among parliamentarians and their partners. It is so important to me for us to have an efficient and effective decision-making structure, given the magnitude and the importance of the project in front of us all. The current framework, as you know, involves 3 levels at which my department, BOY and CEBA, parliamentary administration, and parliamentary partners interact on decision-making, direction, and oversight. That did work with regards to West Block and the Senate and the Library of Parliament and the Sir John A. Building. But given the number of decisions we have in front of us and the desire to proceed in a timely and cost-effective way, I would be supportive of an integrated decision-making framework among parliamentarians and their partners.
Thank you so much, Minister. I'd also like to talk about the heritage. This really matters. Center Block is in many ways a memorial, and it's a war memorial. That column in the rotunda was dedicated to those who were at war. Pearson wanted a tower to replace the Victoria Tower, the one that was destroyed in the fire. The new tower, that Peace Tower, was to commemorate the Great Peace. And if we talk about the memorial chamber of the Peace Tower, Pearson initially wanted all the names etched in the walls, but it soon became clear that that was not possible. And so it was decided to have a book with hand-drawn calligraphy, and it took 32 years to get that book into the chamber. Pearson wanted those who walked on the same soil. When you came into the memorial chamber, he wanted that you walked on the same soil as those who died in the war. The floor comes from France, the altar stone from England. In fact, it's Hopton wood. It's the same stone that was used by the Commonwealth Graves Commission. Each Remembrance Day, those early Remembrance Days, happened before the Peace Tower on the lawn of Parliament. And that memorial chamber is so important to our Silver Cross mothers. The Silver Cross mothers are brought to the memorial chamber. They turn the page to her child. one that was killed. The carillon plays the regimental tune. 2027 will mark the 100th anniversary of the dedication of the Peace Tower and the Memorial Chamber. We mean to make sure we have that 100th anniversary, and I'd like to know how you're thinking about protecting the cultural heritage.
Well, thank you so much for those remarks and the brief history lesson. The building, as you know, has such a rich history. It was first built just prior to Confederation, rebuilt after the 1916 fire, as the speaker mentioned in the House yesterday. And as I've mentioned, and I know Rob has mentioned also, the protection of the heritage and history are critical to the rehabilitation. Whether we're talking about the Peace Tower, whether we're talking about Center Block and the Chamber, whether we're talking about the West Block, Sir John A., we've consistently had the importance of heritage and history at the forefront of our decision making. The department has just finished up the archaeological work in the area surrounding the building. Thousands of items were actually found, including 2 arrowheads. And we are undertaking consultations with the Algonquin regarding those arrowheads. But all of that is to say that despite the focus that I have been placing in my remarks on sustainability, security, and accessibility, those values are balanced at all times with the importance that we place and that we must place on the heritage of these buildings. Rob, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think that's all we're going to have time for. Thank you, Minister.
sorry.
We have a little bit of time. Mr. Broussard, if you'd like to get in a quick question, or Mr. Tucker.
It'll be quick. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Quickly, we've been focusing on the main center block, but we've also spoken about the parliamentary precinct, specifically Wellington and Spark Street. The building that piques my interest, and I know piques the interest of many Canadians, is the former American Embassy. Last year, the Prime Minister gave that building to First Nations communities. My questions are twofold. Number one, do we know what the value of that gift is with respect to that property? And secondly, do we know what the rehabilitation of that building is going to cost Canadian taxpayers when it is fully integrated into an Indigenous centre, which I presume is what the intent of that gift was?
Thank you so much, Mr. Brassard. The spirit and intent of the Indigenous people space has always been that it must remain First Nations, Inuit, and Métis-led. We are actually playing a supporting role in this project. We're supporting the Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations and our Indigenous partners to develop a concept and design for the permanent facility. In terms of the value of the gift, I will turn it over to my deputy.
We may have to, if Rob doesn't know, we have to.
And it's a difficult question to answer, I would say, but we could do some follow-up work on that. And as far as the other question on cost, there's the requirements have not been developed. We're still at the concept stage. As the minister indicated, we're supporting the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations and working with the National Indigenous Organizations and the Algonquin to develop that concept. And then once that concept is developed and requirements are established, then
So I just want to be clear then, is it the expectation that the department will pay for all of the costs related to the rehabilitation of that building to make it the type of space that it's presumed to be?
That was the initial intent of that project, would be to work in partnership to redevelop that as a national.
But partnership
space.
assumes that another side is going to pay. I'm asking whether the expectation is that the government of Canada will pay the full cost of the rehabilitation, or will there be a partnership?
Yeah. At this point, it remains a Government of Canada facility, and at this point, the approach would be is for the Government of Canada to be redeveloping that in partnership. So those specific answers, I wouldn't say we're at that point of how once that concept is in place, how the facility would be managed or work over a longer term.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wright. Thank you, Mr. Brassard. I would just like to thank the witnesses that have Minister Anand and your Deputy Minister and your Assistant Deputy Minister for being here today and answering all of our questions. I think it was quite enlightening. I may be putting the cart before the horse, but I believe this committee will be submitting an interim report at the very least, if not a final report. But you have mentioned today in your presentation that you have some information that you may be bringing to us in 4 weeks. So I believe it will probably be an interim report and then establishing how we can have that input mechanism, and then whatever information you have in the coming weeks to provide will be done according to whatever that recommendation is. So we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Could I make a couple closing remarks?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to thank the members for their questions, and in particular, Mr. Richards, I'd like to thank you for highlighting the decision-making and governance issues. We do need to move and make decisions regarding a number of key points on Center Block, and so if you have recommendations in your interim report regarding that, I would be very pleased to see them. And as mentioned, we will be providing preliminary cost estimates for the Welcome Center and the Chamber to this committee. I would, in closing, also like to thank the translators for their excellent work during the meeting. As you may know, PSPC does take care of the translation across the parliamentary precinct, and we are very fortunate to have an excellent group of translators with us across the Hill.
Thank you,
so
Minister.
much.
And while you are all excused, I was wondering if the rest of the committee could just stay behind for 1 minute, just 1 minute.
It's just a conflict of interest.
Study. Is this regarding this?
Yes. Yes. So the first item is in the subcommittee. Sorry? Okay. Thanks for being so agreeable. In the subcommittee, we had decided that the first business that the committee would undertake would be the conflict of interest review that's done every 5 years. So I wanted to just confirm giving permission to the clerk to write to the commissioner to appear before this committee perhaps on the 24th of March. And then,
But before that,
we will be doing supplementary estimates and perhaps an interim report. So we will discuss that when we get back Tuesday. We're hoping on the 10th that we do the supplementary estimates. And then on the 12th, the analysts will have a draft report for us to take a look at and to add our recommendations to. At that point, it seems like from the presentation today, there's going to be an ongoing process. So we'll decide at that point what we want to put in our initial recommendation. I would think it would be some kind of mechanism so that we can continue working with them. Also, for this study, we have to pass a budget. So this budget, I have been told, has a lot of leeway. It doesn't look like we'll be spending anything close to the amount that's in here because it's just food costs really at this point. We haven't flown anyone in or anything like that, but we have to approve it in order to move forward. So you've all received the budgets in front of you.
You can ask for a motion for someone to.
Okay.
as presented.
Mr. Gerritsen has moved for the budget to be accepted. All agree? Okay. All right. Thank you. Committee adjourned.
But I'll put you on notice.
Don't jinx this.